ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 28, Puranjanadikam Subhuman in the next life. So we are at text 62. Aham bhavan च स्त्वन्यं तत्त्वेवाहं विचक्षभो ननुपश्यन्ति कवयः छिद्रं जातो मनागपि. Translation.
My dear friend, I, the supersoul, and you, the individual soul, are not different in quality, for we are both spiritual. In fact, my dear friend, you are qualitatively non different from me in your constitutional position. Just try to consider this subject. Those who are actually advanced scholars who are in knowledge do not find any qualitative difference between you and me. Purport. Both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity are qualitatively one. There is no factual difference between the two. The Mayavadi philosophers are again and again defeated by the illusory energy because they think that there is no separation between the supersoul and the individual soul, or that there is no supersoul. They are also misled in thinking that everything is the supersoul. However, those who are Kavayaha, learned scholars, actually know the facts. They do not commit such mistakes. They know that God and the individual soul are one in quality, but that the individual soul falls under the clutches of Maya, whereas the super soul, the supreme personality of Godhead, is the controller of Maya. Maya is the creation of the Supreme Lord, Maya Srishta, Maya Srishta. Therefore, the Supreme Lord is the controller of Maya. Although one in quality with the Supreme Lord, the individual soul is under the control of Maya. Mayavadi philosophers cannot distinguish between the controller and the controlled. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So now the Avigyat Sakha further is describing to Vaidarvi that, my dear friend, I and you, I am in super soul, and you here, the living entity, we are qualitatively one. And there is no difference in qualitative in our qualitative constitution when it comes to the spiritual constitution. And this is how Kavayaha, the advanced scholars, they do not find any qualitative difference between you and me. Important word to mark here is qualitative oneness. Right. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that both living entity and the Supreme Lord, they are qualitatively one. That is Satchidananda. It is as simple as, the ocean and the drop of the ocean. So ocean and the drop of the ocean will have the same salt composition, but that doesn't mean the drop becomes the ocean, right? Again, the example is material, so it is to be understood only by the material sense, not to be extended like all the drops come together to become ocean. That is also not reality, because in reality, none of the drop will merge with another drop. On a molecular level, there will be distinction and uniqueness. Existential separation will be there at even at the molecular level. Right. However, Prabhupada writes that the Mayavadi philosophers they are misled in thinking that everything is supreme. Aham Bhavan, and people will be jumping up and down. Oh, you see, Lord is saying, I am you. No. The same Bhagavatam describes about the activities in the Vaikuntha. And same Bhagavatam describes about Naikatmatami Spruhayanti Kechit. That my devotees, they will never aspire for Ekatmata. Madbhava Seva Madirata Bhariha. Okay. So, so this ekatmata is the qualitative ekatmata that is Satchidananda. And this is why? Because this is how the two entities, the two personalities, they are dealing with Maya. The living entity is Maya Sharana, and the Supreme Lord is Maya Dhakshena. Right. So, Srila Prabhupada writes here that the Mayavadi philosophers they are unable to distinguish between the controlled and the controller, and falsely they think that they are the controller and they are the Supreme Lord. Text 63. यथा पुरुषात्मानम् एकमादर्श चक्षुषोः द्विभा द्विवा द्विधा भूतम् अवेग्धेक्षेत् तथैवान्तरमावयोः. Translation.
Translation: as a person sees the reflection of his body in a mirror to be one with himself and not different, whereas others actually see two bodies, so in our material condition, in which the living being is affected and yet not affected, there is a difference between God and the living entity. Purport: being affected by the conditioning of matter, Mayavadi philosophers cannot see the difference between the Supreme Lord and the living entity. When the sun is reflected in a pot of water, the sun knows that there is no difference between himself and the reflected sun in the water. Those in ignorance, however, perceive that there are many small suns reflected in each and every pot. As far as the brilliance is concerned, there is brilliance both in the original sun and in the reflections. But the reflections are small, whereas the original sun is very large. Vaishnava philosophers conclude that the living entity is simply a small sample of the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Qualitatively, God and the living entities are one, but quantitatively, the living entities are small fragments of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord is full, powerful, and opulent. In the previous verse, the Lord says, "My dear friend, you and I are not different." This non-different refers to qualitative oneness, for it was not necessary for the Paramatma, the Supreme Personality, to remind the conditional soul that he is not one in quantity. The self-realized soul never thinks that he and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are one in every respect. Although he and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are one in quality, the living entity is prone to forget his spiritual identity, whereas the Supreme Personality never forgets. This is the difference between lipta and alipta. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally alipta, uncontaminated by the external energy. The conditioned soul, however, being in contact with material nature, forgets his real identity. Therefore, when he sees himself in the conditioned state, he identifies himself with the body. For the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, there is no difference between the body and the soul. He is completely soul. He has no material body. Although the super soul, Paramatma, and the individual soul are within the body, the super soul is devoid of designation, whereas the conditioned soul is designated by his particular type of body. The super soul is called Antaryami and he is extensive. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 13.3. Kshetra Jnanam api mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. O scion of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. The super soul is present in everyone's body.
So we will read in
Yes.
section.
Yes,
Long. Now the Lord further says, as a person sees the reflection of his body in the mirror, very beautiful example. So when we are standing in front of the mirror, to be one with himself and not different, right? He's not, he's watching himself in the mirror. Whereas others actually are the, whereas others actually see there are two bodies. So in our material condition, in which the living entity is being affected and not yet affected, there is a difference between God and living entity. So here there is, the Lord is going to describe about the quantitative difference between the two. So previous shloka we have seen the qualitative oneness, and here we are going to see quantitative difference. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining, it's long purport, that the Mayavadi philosophers cannot differentiate between the Supreme Lord and living entity. And now Srila Prabhupada gives the example of a sun here. When the sun is reflected in the pot, the sun knows that there is no difference between the sun and the something which is reflected in the pot. This is one and the same. But those in ignorance, they think that there are many small suns. Like I still remember when I was in second standard, and first time they taught us that there is a sun, there is a moon, technically, and how we are revolving around. We are so excited. From the window, I saw sun, and from the second window, I saw second sun. Third window, I saw that. Then I was telling teacher that, sir, there are three suns actually. Different window has different sun. So this is the sign of less intelligence. Those in ignorance, they think that there are many small suns reflected in each and every pot. As far as the brilliance is concerned, there is a brilliance both in the original sun and the reflection, but the reflections are small, whereas the original sun is very large. So what this means is there is qualitatively one may say, yeah, there is a sun in this pot, there is sun in another spot, there is another sun in another pot, right? But the difference in brilliance, that is the quantitative differentiation. Okay. So this example is given only for the quantitative difference, right? So this is to be understood very carefully, that this example of the sun is given for the quantitative difference, right? Original sun is very large, whereas the sun that we see in the pot is very small, and there is no measure of difference in quantity. One is Anu, another is Vibhu. So this is how the Lord is saying. The Lord is saying, you and me are non-different. That is from the perspective that you and me are non-different from the perspective of qualitative oneness, and the living entity that is going to experience love. It is like the father telling the son, my dear child, you and me are non-different. Okay, that doesn't mean that we and me are non-different. They are different, but still they are non-different. That is Achintya Bheda Bheda. Further, Srila Prabhupada explains that the self-realized soul never thinks he is the same with the Supreme Lord. Okay, he is aware, but when the living entity is prone to forget the spiritual identity, he becomes conditioned, right? So there are three personalities one has to realize. There is living entity who is conditioned. There is a living entity who is eternally liberated. And still there is a greater living entity who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tasmat akshara atitoham aksharaadapi chottama atosmi ved loko vedecha pratitah purushottama. Tasmat akshara atitoham is beyond akshara, aksharaadapi chottama, and therefore is known as Purushottama. He will never forget his own identity, whereas the living entity will forget. And therefore, there is a difference between Lipta and Alipta. The super soul is always Alipta, right? This is very important. He will never forget his identity because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whereas the living entity forgets time to time. Even a powerful living entity will forget. And what is the example? Example is Arjuna. Arjuna is asking, my dear Lord, how did you give this knowledge to Sun God? And then the Lord says, yeah, Bahunemi Vatitani Janmani Tapacharjuna. My dear Arjuna, you are extremely powerful, but still you are a living entity, and therefore you have forgotten that we have taken many births in the past because you are conditioned by time and space. So this is the difference between Lipta and Alipta. Another difference is there is a difference between Deha and Dehi. Like the Supreme Lord, when he comes to the material world or he is in the spiritual world, there is no difference between the body of the Lord and the Supreme Lord himself. Whereas the living entity is growing from one body to another. And therefore, one can say the body is completely different. And Dehi and Deha is completely different. Dehi is the soul, Deha is the body. Right. So there is a distinction between body and the soul. That distinction does not arise That distinction does not exist within the Supreme Lord. Then somebody may say, but we also see the Lord growing from, the Lord, there is a Bal Leela of the Lord, there is a Damodar Leela of the Lord, there is a Kaishor Leela of the Lord, how he is growing. So it is not that way. What is the example? The example is like the sun is rising. So sometimes there is a beautiful shloka also, Sanskrit shloka, which says the rising and the setting sun, they are. We can, when the sun is rising, one may see, the reddish, yellowish sun is rising, and then the sun will go up in the sky, and then he will be with full brilliance. It is difficult even to glance at the sun. And when the sun is setting, one will again the sun will become very mild, and sun we can have darshan of the sun. So there is no change in the sun. By our relative position, we see Suryodaya and Suryasta. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, when he performs activities, it may appear that he is growing old or something like that, but there is no difference between Deha and Dehi in case of the Supreme Lord. So one difference is quantitative, the brilliance, Prabhupada gives the example. Another difference is Lipta and Alipta. And the third difference is Deha and Dehi. This is being discussed here. Yeah, please continue.
Super soul is present in everyone's body, whereas the individual soul is conditioned in one particular type of body. The individual soul cannot understand what is taking place in another's body, but the super soul knows very well what is happening in all bodies. In other words, the super soul is always present in his full spiritual position, whereas the individual soul is prone to forget himself. Nor is the individual soul present everywhere. Generally, in his conditioned state, the individual soul cannot understand his relationship with the super soul. But sometimes, when he is free from all conditional existence, he can see the real difference between the super soul and himself. When the super soul tells the conditioned soul, you and I are one and the same, it is to remind the conditioned soul of his spiritual identity as being qualitatively one. In the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 3.28.40, it is said, Yatholmukad Vispulingad Dhumadvapi Sambhavat Api Atma Venabhimatad Yathagniha Pruthag Ulmukat. Fire has different features. There is a flame, the sparks, and the smoke. Although these are one in quality, there is still a difference between the fire, the flame, the spark, and the smoke. The living entity becomes conditioned, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is different because he does not become conditioned at any point. In the Vedas, it is stated, Atma tatha prathag drashta Bhagavan Brahma Sagnitaha. Atma is the individual soul as well as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the seer of everything. Although both are spirit, there is always a difference. In the Smriti, it is also said, Yathagneha Kshudra Vispulinga Yucharananti. Just as sparks manifest in a large fire, similarly, the small individual souls are present in the big spiritual flame. In Bhagavad Gita 9.4, Lord Krishna says, Matsthani sarvabhutani nachaham teshva avasthitah. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Although all living beings are resting in him, as small fiery sparks rest on a large flame, both are differently situated. Similarly, in the Vishnu Puran, it is said, Ekadesha sthitastagner jyotsna vistarani yatha parasya brahmanaha shaktis tathedam akhilam jagat. Fire is situated in one place, but it distributes heat and light. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is distributing his energies in different ways. The living entity is but one of these energies, marginal energy. The energy and the energetic are one in one sense, but they are differently situated as energy and the energetic. Similarly, the Satchidananda form confirmed in Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Paramakrishna Satchidananda Vigraha is different from that of the living entity in both his conditioned and liberated states. Only atheists consider the living entity and the personality of Godhead equal in all respects. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, Mayavadi Bhashya Sunile Hai Sarvanasha. If one follows the instructions of Mayavadi philosophers and believes that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the individual soul are one, his understanding of real philosophy is forever doomed.
Yeah. Now, further, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that the individual soul, now there is a difference between kshetra. So Srila Prabhupada is quoting the Bhagavad Gita verse here. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. The living entity who is present in the body is knower of only that body at the best. Of course, we do not know all the things happening within the body. But if at all, even the sense of the basic sense of pleasure and pain, that is limited. The perception is limited only to the individual body. Whereas the Supreme Lord, Sarva Kshetreshu Bharata, the awareness of the Supreme Lord is there across all the bodies simultaneously, right? For all the living entities. And that is the difference. So there's the fire Srila Prabhupada mentions. Now Srila Prabhupada quotes, here the 5 references. One is Veda, Smriti, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Vishnu Puran. Okay. What is the main point of these 5 references is that there is a Kshetra Kshetrajna, and the 2 Kshetras are different, and the 2 levels of Kshetrajna, they are also different. Now, the first it is being quoted, Srimad Bhagavatam, that there are different features of the fire, like the flame, spark, and smoke. Although they are one quality, but still there is a difference between fire, spark, and smoke. Right. So here the fire is compared to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Spark is compared to the living entity. Right. So this is the Jiva. And the smoke is compared to the Maya. Right. Because Maya is also originating from the Supreme Lord. So the origin is from the same place. It's like, we have seen what is the origin of the shadow. Oh, origin of the shadow is the sun. Because, without sun, when the light is obstructed by the object, then it creates shadow. But for creating a shadow, you need a sun. So origin of the shadow is sun. Similarly, origin of Maya is also the Supreme Lord, which is compared to smoke here. So the spark, when bewildered by the smoke, considered himself to be fire. But actually they are different. Spark is originating from the fire. Spark has the original quality. Qualitatively one like the fire, but quantitatively fire is different and spark is different. So this is a very beautiful example of a fire, the spark and smoke. And the smoke is bewildering, right? Nobody likes smoke. Smoke is bewildering. So this is the example from Srimad Bhagavatam. Then Srila Prabhupada quotes Vedas, which says that the Atma is the individual soul, but the Paramatma is the super soul, seer of the everything. Then there is a Shruti mantra, Smriti mantra, describing the same truth, that the large fire, and similarly there are the sparks which are coming out from that large fire, which is confirmed by Bhagavad Gita, Matsthani sarva bhutani nachaham teshu vastitah. And same with the Vishnu Puran, that the fire is situated in one place, but it distributes heat and light. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is distributing his energy across different ways. And therefore, the energy and energetic, they are same in the sense that they are qualitatively one, but they are different because they are quantitatively different and existentially different. See, energy cannot exist without energetic. Shakti cannot exist without Shaktiman. Kiski Shakti, right? When you say Shakti, the first question you ask is Kiski Shakti. When you say light, you ask the first question, which light? Tube light, bulb light, sunlight, moonlight, which light? Right? So it has to come, the Shakti has to come from a source, Shaktiman. Similarly, Prabhupada used to say, consciousness. Which consciousness? Right? Prabhupada used to say, nature. Whose nature? Right? So people are simply bewildered thinking that the Shakti is great, nature is great. But the nature, the Shakti has to be based on Shaktiman. So there has to be a Shaktiman who is holding this Shakti. And this is exactly misinterpreted, misunderstood by Mayavad. And they falsely think they will find some reference here and there, like previous verse, Aham Bhavan. So, they will just dancing next to see Aham Bhavan, Tattvamasi. Again, the next dance, Tattvamasi, I am that. Right? So, forgetting, and Prabhupada says, and therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he forbidden his devotees to hear Mayavad. Mayavad bhashya shunile hai sarvanash. It will just lead to a doom if one hears this, Mayavadam, asat shastram prachannam bodham uchyate. What is the doom? Doom means one bhakti sentiment will be completely finished, right, by this hearing of Mayavad. Text 64. एवं समानसो हंसेन प्रतिबोधितः स्वस्थं तत्व्याभिचारेण नष्टामापः पुनः स्मृतिम्. Translation.
In this way, both swans live together in the heart. When one swan is instructed by other, he is situated in his constitutional position. This means he regains his original Krishna consciousness, which was lost because of his material attraction. Purport. Here it is clearly stated that Hamso Hamsena Pratibodhita. The individual soul and the super soul are both compared to swans, Hamsa, because they are white and uncontaminated. One swan, however, is superior and is the instructor of other. When inferior swan is separated from other swan, he is attracted to material enjoyment. This is the cause of his fall down. When he hears the instructions of other swan, he understands his real position and is again revived to his original consciousness. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna comes down, Avtara, to deliver his devotees and kill the demons. He also gives sublime instructions in the form of Bhagavad Gita. The individual soul has to understand his position by the grace of the Lord and the spiritual master, because the text of Bhagavad Gita cannot be understood simply by academic qualifications. One has to learn Bhagavad Gita from a realized soul. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadikshyanti te jnanam jnaninas darshina. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Bhagavad Gita 4.34. Thus, one has to select a bona fide spiritual master and become enlightened to his original consciousness. In this way, the individual soul can understand that he is always subordinate to the super soul. As soon as he declines and remains subordinate and tries to become an enjoyer, he begins his material conditioning. When he abandons this spirit of being an individual owner or enjoyer, he becomes situated in his liberated state. The word swastata, swasta, meaning situated in one's original position, is very significant in this verse. When one gives up his unwanted attitude of superiority, he becomes situated in his original position. The word tad vyabhicharena is also significant, for it indicates that when one is separated from God due to disobedience, his real sense is lost. Again, by the grace of Krishna and Guru, he can be properly situated in his liberated position. These verses are spoken by Srila Narad Muni, and his purpose in speaking them is to revive our consciousness. Although the living entity and the supersoul are one in quality, the individual soul has to pursue the instruction of the supersoul. That is the state of liberation. Hare Krishna.
Evam samanaso hamso. Evam samanaso hamso hamsena pratibodhitah. Very beautiful verse. That in this way, both the swans are living together in the heart. And when the one swan is instructed by another, he is situated in the constitutional position. What this means is, he regains his original Krishna consciousness, which is lost because of material attraction. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, Hamso Hamsena Pratibodhitaha means Both are compared to the swans. Why swans? Because they are white, uncontaminated. They are spiritual in nature. But when one swan is superior, another is the one swan is the instructor, Guru, Jagat Guru. So he's the Supreme Lord Krishna, Paramatma. Another swan is a disciple, Shishya. He's the inferior swan. And as soon as the one swan is separated from another, the material conditioning begins. And this is true at so many different levels. We start making distance with our senior devotees. We will have so many different distractions, like the prominent Shiksha Guru that we have. So, or when we start keeping distance from our spiritual master or devotee association in general, and then what to speak of keeping distance from the Supreme Lord, right? So material conditioning begins, and therefore association is very highly stressed. Association is extremely important. And especially association with, Srila Prabhupada further mentions, with one's spiritual master, tat vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. So one has to select one spiritual master and surrender unto him and follow the text of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, in this case. Then one will become swastha. What is swastha? One will be situated in one's original position. Then he will become swarth, attain the swartha. What is the swartha? Swartha gatim hi Vishnu. And otherwise, that is very strong word used here, tad vyabhicharena. So for a living entity, Jivatma, anything other than the obedience to the Supreme Lord is considered to be a vyabhichar, and his good sense is lost. But this good sense can be revived by the grace of Guru Krishna Prasade Pai. And in this case, Srila Prabhupada writes, Srila Narad Muni is very kindly speaking all these words so that we can revive our Krishna consciousness. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, you were saying the Nitya Muktas, especially like Arjuna asking Krishna that, okay, you and I have passed many lives. Krishna said that we both have passed many lives, but you don't remember, I remember everything. So even the Nitya Muktas, they don't remember the past, though they come as conditioned souls, at least looking like conditioned souls. They don't need to remember the past lives, right?
To participate in the Leela, right?
Okay.
So, yeah. So, I mean, to participate in the Leela, they also will be covered over. What to speak of they? Even the Supreme Lord is covered by Yoga Maya, so that Leela can continue.
Okay, understand.
But the forgetfulness of these personalities, like Arjuna and these are Nitya Siddha devotees, is far different than the forgetfulness of an ordinary living entity who is conditioned. Right. It is just like, one takes the role in the drama and really forgets one identity. But he's aware that he is doing drama somewhere in the back of his mind. And that is the case with all these great personalities. But the living entity, he is Abhinivesha, Lipta, is very deeply involved in that. Right. So there is a difference between the forgetfulness. And that is more to facilitate the pastime.
Okay. So it's mainly from the Leela perspective, because eternal Jiva, like Nitya Muktas, when they come to assist the Lord, technically, they also change bodies, right? Like
Yes, they do change bodies.
They do change bodies. Now, unlike Supreme Lord, he doesn't change body, but Jivas
They change
can
body
change.
means they acquire a body. Supreme Lord comes as he is in the spiritual realm, but the living entity acquires a body.
Acquires. Okay.
And even the Nitya Mukta also acquires the body. That's why Srila Prabhupada says that Guru Naramatir, seeing the bodily condition of the Guru, one should not minimize the position of the spiritual master. That is one angle of seeing this. Another is, and therefore also, and because the body is fully engaged in the service of the Lord, the body is also spiritual from that sense, from the sense of the Yukta Vairagya. But yes, they do change the body and they acquire a material body so that they can facilitate the preaching in the material world. So simple. But when the Lord comes, he doesn't take a body. He comes
Yes.
as he is.
I agree. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare
Haribol.
Yes, Mataji?
Prabhuji, there is a indicate here spark, smoke, and fire. Fire is Bhagavan Paramatma. Spark is a living entity, and smoke is when we enter the Maya, then smoke will come. But here I am just confused about that. If living entity and Paramatma is qualitatively same, so how can living entity come to the connect with the Maya?
How the living entity is connected with the fire?
No. If quality wise, Paramatma and Jiva is the same, but when the Jivatma comes to the connect with Maya, so how can, why not Paramatma save the Jivatma if he is bewildered to where we go?
Yeah, so this we were discussing day before yesterday, right? That living entity has a desire to serve the Supreme Lord, which is not facilitated in the spiritual realm.
Okay.
So to perform that desire, and there are a couple more reasons also Srila Prabhupada gives in other purport. Sometimes, like the Chatush Kumar, they are cursing Jiva and Jay and Vijay. That is one reason why the living entity may come down. Sometimes Atato Bhayankar Jigyasa, out of some very odd curiosity, the living entity may want to come. Just like sometimes you have a desire. देखते हैं क्या चल रहा है तिहाड़ जेल में. And one may go and watch the Tihar jail, but in the spell of watching the Tihar jail, one may commit some criminal activity because he's in that surrounding.
Understood.
So yeah, so these are the three reasons Srila Prabhupada gives to perform a service which is not required in the spiritual world. Sometimes because of the unnecessary curiosity, and the third reason is at sometimes being cursed by just as in the case of Jay and Vijay. The living entity may come to the material world.
Yes, Prabhuji, now understood. Okay, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhupada.